I'm Maria Elena Giassi, and this is Currents. The violent end of Muammar Gaddafi ignites celebrations in the streets of Libya. But is it ever right to rejoice in the face of death?
I don't think it's good to celebrate anybody's death.
Plus, it's deja vu all over again. A disgraced prophecyr says today is the end of the world. But can you predict the rapture?
This year, a lot of talk has gone out about end of time, to the point that people even propose dates and times. And again, that is nowhere written in the Bible.
And it was a fairy tale ending to a match made in Iowa.
Staying together for 72 years, I'd say is good. And nowadays, that's exceptional.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Matt McClure has the night off. It may not have received as much fanfare the second time around, but today, October 21st, was the new Judgment Day, according to radio evangelist Harold Camping. Camping had originally predicted May 21st as the fateful day, but when that came and went without so much as a whimper, Camping was forced to make a revised forecast.
The great earthquake and rapture and the universe melting in fervent heat will all happen on the last day, October 21, 2011. In other words, we've been teaching that it would happen on May 21, but it's all going to be compressed on the last day.
Now, the world has had its share of earthquakes and tornadoes this year, but do they signal doomsday? Where should we look for answers? For more on these tough questions, we went to Sacred Heart Church in Cambria Heights, Queens, which recently hosted a revival to help people face the challenges of the end time.
We have journeyed through understanding our need to prepare for the end times. And that end time is not any particular day. We know that that is not written anywhere in the Bible.
Today's last day of our 3-day retreat here at Sacred Heart is important because it clears up many points, many beliefs with the understanding of, end of time, what end of time really means.
This year, a lot of talk has gone out about end of time, to the point that people even propose dates and times. And again, that is nowhere written in the Bible.
You cannot put off anything and say tomorrow. Tomorrow is promised to no one, and we're not sure because, like God said, the only person who knows about tomorrow, and if there is going to be a tomorrow, is God, not even the Son of Man.
That God is faithful and just, that if we come back, that his faithfulness will guarantee that he will not only forgive us, but he will also cleanse us from every wrongdoing.
God wants us to live our lives pleasing to him all the time. And then it wouldn't matter if Jesus came today or came next year, because whenever he decided to come or decides to come, he will see you or meet you living a reconciled life. So I don't think you should live in fear.
I do believe in the end of times because the signs of the end of times are everywhere. It is plain to see that we are living in the end of times.
Well, I'm not convinced that the end is near. The end means different things to different people.
Look around and see what's happening. The flooding and the earthquake and the hurricane. It isn't just happening by chance. God is trying to tell us to change our lives, the way we think and the way we act and the way we live.
Somebody say, God, neighbor, and self. Stay reconciled in those three dimensions, and no matter what the day or the hour is, in God's visitation, he shall find you well. Somebody say amen. The theme really is a theme that calls people to consciousness. Many a time our daily activities can becloud the fact that we are not just human beings on earth, but that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And so after this human experience, there is another place we are going to. And the question is, am I ready to get there?
It is going to happen. There is no if, and, or but. It is going to happen. Let us live our life as though today is the last day of our life.
As for today's doomsday forecast, Harold Camping did answer his front door, but told a reporter, quote, "We're not having a conversation. There's nothing to report here." Stay tuned. There's more currents ahead. An American bishop is staying put, despite calls for his removal. But first, it's the news that has dominated the headlines, the death of Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. And now we have the question that has dominated our news. Is the world a better place without Gaddafi? We talked with people outside of Holy Name Church in Windsor Terrace in search of some answers.
Absolutely. He was terrible, and I think the Islamists who are now going to take over are probably just as bad, if not worse.
There are a lot of other things going on in this world, especially here in the United States.
So I don't think that we should have meddled in there in the first place. It's not as though there are some good guys and bad guys. They're all bad guys.
He was a terrorist, and he killed, look at him, he killed all those people on that Pan Am plane, and terrible, innocent people.
I mean, I guess it's a good thing in their eyes, but to me, I don't believe in killing and stuff like that, you know?
Welcome back to Currents. I'm Maria Elena Giassi. Coming up later, a couple who stayed together to the very end. But first, let's have a look at the day's headlines. There is a brand new media company on the block. The Diocese of Brooklyn has officially merged its two media outlets into one company. The diocesan newspaper, The Tablet, and Transvideo Communications, the parent company of The Net, are now under one company umbrella, DeSales Media Group. Art Dignam, a former NBC executive, has been named DeSales' new CEO. Dignam says he wants to challenge DeSales to, quote, think outside the box, focus on the future, and establish strategic goals. Brooklyn Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio has issued a formal diocesan-wide decree setting the record straight on the diocese's stance on same-sex marriage. The decree, which went into effect on Wednesday, states that clergy and employees of the diocese are forbidden from taking part in or facilitating same-sex marriages. The use of church property to celebrate same-sex marriages is also prohibited. The decree comes after lawmakers voted to legalize same-sex marriage in New York back in June. To read the entire statement, you can visit our website. Another bishop, meanwhile, says he will keep his regular schedule despite calls for his resignation. A spokeswoman says Kansas City Bishop Robert Finn has a full schedule of pastoral activities and no plans to change that. The growing calls for his resignation come after last week's indictment of Bishop Finn for delaying 5 months to report a priest possessing child pornography on his computer. With the indictment, Bishop Finn becomes the highest-ranking church leader charged in the abuse scandal. Closer to home, the trial for a former church janitor accused of murdering a priest in New Jersey got underway yesterday. The janitor, Jose Feliciano, admits to killing Father Edward Hines, but said he did so after Hines threatened him to fire him if he ended their ongoing sexual relationship. Prosecutors say the janitor made that story up and that Hines was going to fire Feliciano after discovering the janitor had a 20-year-old arrest warrant for indecent assault of a minor. Here in New York, a bus company is under fire from Mayor Bloomberg over its back-of-the-bus policy for women passengers. The mayor says the city will shut down the privately owned B110 bus line if the company does not do away with its policy of requiring women to sit at the back of the bus. The bus line serves Orthodox Jews who forbid the mixing of the sexes in public. Although the bus company is privately owned, it is required to obey city laws. And Occupy Wall Street, move over. London's historic St. Paul's Cathedral has been forced to shut its doors for the first time in over 70 years, courtesy of Occupy London. The prominent Anglican church has had to close its doors to visitors after the Occupy protesters started camping out on the church's doorsteps. This marks the first time St. Paul's has been forced to close since World War II. And we brought you this story earlier this week. The 2-year-old girl who was clinging to life after being struck twice by hit-and-run drivers has passed away. CNN's Eunice Yoon has the story.
Across China, people absorbed the news they were dreading, the death of 2-year-old Wang Yue. Her little life has left this world, the doctor says. We feel deep pain and shame, as everybody does. We wish Wang Yue's parents a smoother future.
Over a week ago, little Yue was brought to that hospital after being critically injured in not one, but 2 hit-and-run accidents. Her passing, though, hasn't stopped an emotional debate about the state of the country's morality, as this headline says.
We have to use the knife of conscience to cut out the cancer of immorality, it reads, quoting the provincial governor. The public was shocked by the accidents, but also by the indifference of over a dozen people who walked by the bleeding child without stopping. It took 10 minutes before an elderly scrap peddler called for help. Some blamed a fast-paced, materialistic society as China modernizes. I can't understand the inaction of the passers-by, this man says. People of my age are more traditional. We're different from the younger generation. Amid the backlash, prosecutors have opened their inquiry into the accidents. Both drivers are now in custody, and the public continues to reflect. I'll think more about helping others, this woman says. That's one thing positive out of this tragedy. A 2-year-old who wandered away from her parents and whose death has led a people to think and ask questions about their society.
That was CNN's Eunice Yoon reporting. Former Hong Kong Archbishop Cardinal Joseph Zen is fighting accusations that he mismanaged a $2.5 million donation. Cardinal Zen admits receiving the money from one of Hong Kong's wealthiest residents, but says he passed it along to needy Catholic dioceses in mainland China. Both the cardinal and the benefactor, a recent convert to Catholicism, have been critical of the Chinese government's crackdown on religious activity. This week, Cardinal Zen began a hunger strike to protest new policies that he says will allow the government to have more control of Catholic schools. 2 bishops have a friendly wager going on for World Series bragging rights. St. Louis Archbishop Robert Carlson and Fort Worth Bishop Kevin Van have put some hometown treats on the line. If the Texas Rangers win, Bishop Van will get some St. Louis delicacies, including toasted ravioli, pretzels, and locally brewed beer. If the Cardinals win, Archbishop Carlson gets some Texas barbecue, and what else but a Stetson cowboy hat. The Rangers took Game 2 last night to tie the series at 1 game apiece. The series resumes tomorrow night in Arlington, Texas. And one St. Louis area family is convinced they're a lucky charm for the Cardinals. Reporter Heidi Glaus has their story.
That might have been opening day right there.
Kelly Lachine and her husband John are no doubt big fans of our hometown team.
My husband always says you can be anything you want to be, but you can't be a Cubs fan.
I mean, he had each of their 3 kids in a Cards cap darn near before they were swaddled.
Of course, they're all 2 sizes too big for their little itty-bitty heads.
But here's what makes this family a bit of an anomaly. You see, Kelly birthed a baby in 2004, 2006, and 11 weeks ago in 2011. All years the Cards have played in the World Series.
Oh yeah, I go to pick up the kids at school and they say, "There's the World Series, baby."
Of course, things weren't looking so good back in August, but let's just say Kelly had, well, a gut feeling.
It was a long shot, but we said with our record, who knows? And then it kept getting closer and closer. And then we said, oh my goodness. So we kept calling her a little good luck charm.
As you can imagine, they're constantly pressured to add to their little team.
That's what everyone keeps telling us, like, can you have a baby next year and the next year?
But this is probably the end of the Lachine streak. So we'll just have to wait and see how lucky little Emily is.
Heidi Glaus with that story. And the Waldorf Astoria may have been packed with heavyweights, but the mood was light at the 66th annual Alfred E. Smith Dinner. Organized by the Archdiocese of New York, funds raised at the dinner benefit local Catholic charities. And by all accounts, it was a windfall, raising over $2 million for needy children, the second largest amount ever raised in the dinner's history. There's more currents ahead. When we return, in this Respect Life Month, we go into the deep for the Catholic perspective on life through the lens of the death penalty. But first, Muammar Gaddafi's violent end sparked celebrations in streets all around the world. But was his death a reason to rejoice?
I don't think it's good to celebrate anybody's death.
We should celebrate that he's dead. That's one less now we don't get. That's terrible to say, but I am a Christian. Get rid of all the others, it would be another one. That would be good. At least the world would be safer.
That's the way things are in the Arab world. When they kill their enemies, they go out and they celebrate. They hand out candies.
Is it wrong? Is it moral? Is it right? You know, people celebrate the death of people that they feel symbolize something that they were against all the time.
To do it just to show hatred towards another person because they have done something wrong, I just feel like this is sad.
Welcome back. Catholics celebrate the month of October as Respect Life Month, and much of the attention during this month is focused on life at its very beginnings. Now, while the Catholic Church's position on the sanctity of life is very clear, what might surprise you is that its teachings extend far beyond the womb. The twin September executions of Troy Davis for murdering a police officer and Lawrence Russell for the dragging death of a man made many think about death in a month dedicated to life. To gain a deeper understanding of the Church's stance on the complicated issue of the death penalty, Matt McClure sat down with Brooklyn's own Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio for the latest Into the Deep.
Bishop DiMarzio, thanks for being here.
Good to be here again.
Really appreciate it. Well, of course, October is Respect Life Month. That's something that's been very big on the minds of Catholics around the U.S. and around the world. But, you know, a lot of times I think when people think of Respect Life Month, their minds go first and foremost to the issue of abortion. Something that might get overlooked by some segments anyway is the death penalty. Right before we started observing Respect Life Month, a couple of very high-profile death penalty cases took place, and some people were executed in the South, and kind of brought that issue to light. Is there a specific church teaching or a doctrine on the death penalty and what Catholics believe about it?
Yes, the understanding of the death penalty has evolved as society has evolved. I think, again, John Paul II in his Gospel of Life encyclical, which he speaks about the whole issue of life, gives us probably the most definitive teaching we have to date. And that, I just have it here, so it might be good to read it, because he's in the Gospel of Life, he says, he challenged followers of Christ to be unconditionally pro-life. He reminded us that the dignity of human life must never be taken away, even in the case of someone who has done great evil. Modern society has the means of protecting itself without definitively denying criminals the chance to reform. So the chance to reform is prison. You know, maybe it's life sentence. But the Church's teaching is defined on basically protection of persons, self-defense. So we're defending society if we have no other way except to put a criminal to death. But if there are ways that this person can live, reform, have a chance for life, then we should give them that chance. So again, it's not a definitive teaching in a sense that we cannot use the death penalty. The states don't have the right to use the death penalty. The Holy Father's not saying that. But he's saying that given the circumstances of society today, it certainly is not necessary that it be used. And that's the way we've gone. And we see also that society is changing its idea on this. Even a place like Texas, where kind of the capital of the death penalty in our country, public opinion is changing against it. Little by little, we see changes. In like 2 years, we saw like a 12% drop in the support for the death penalty. Mainly because I guess, with all the new methods, the DNA testing and etc., we want to be really sure somebody's guilty.
Sure.
And in that sense, and you say a person is executed and you're not quite sure they committed it. That's really tragic.
And you have a case like Troy Davis too, where a lot of the witnesses recant their testimony.
Right.
So you have to be sure.
Sure. No, I mean,
absolutely.
taking human life is really, something very critical. I mean, the other day there was this whole issue about these animals being let loose in Ohio, and the police had to kill them, and everybody's an outcry. You're worried about. I like animals too, but that's not human life. Human life is much more important than a few wild animals. So we've got to be careful of where we put our values, of what we see as really important.
Sure. There was a recent survey talked about kind of the changing tide of this, and I believe there was a recent survey that said over 50% of Catholics are both identifying themselves as pro-life, but also pro-death penalty. Is it possible to do that, to be pro-life and pro-death penalty?
I guess obviously it is. People think that, and again, there's no absolute prohibition about being, for the death penalty. But I think the statistic is important to realize that that's changed. It used to be much greater percentage of Catholics were for the death penalty. Now it's a lesser percentage, So I think over time, the teaching of the church has gotten through to people. They're starting to think about it differently as society is in general.
Is there a concerted effort, you think, on the church's part to actually get that message across? I
think so. I will write about it in one of my column coming up, and we want to let people know what the church teaches, and this is in all areas. We have to do that constantly. Remind people what we teach and what we believe, and so that will have an influence on people in the long term.
Sure. All right. Well, Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio, thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
There is more currents ahead. When we return, they were a couple that hardly ever separated, even unto death. We'll have their story. But first, if you picked up today's local newspapers, you may have seen this, a gruesome, bloody image of Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. We asked people in front of Holy Name Church if the media has gone too far.
Wow, that's it looks like a brutal death,
Okay. Yeah.
No, God.
It's kind of graphic to be on a newspaper. I think if he's dead, you should just say that he's dead.
It's definitely there for shock value, absolutely.
I think they ought to show it because I think they ought to show what happens in that part of the world. I don't think it's complete without a picture like that.
Is it appropriate, is it not? Will it sell newspapers? Yeah, it probably will sell newspapers.
Finally, on a day when we talked about the death penalty and the demise of a brutal ruler, we want to bring you the story of a couple who were together always, in life until death did they part. It is the story of a husband and wife from Iowa who were married 72 years, rarely leaving each other's side. And in a circumstance that has been hoped and prayed for, they left this world together. Reporter Emily Price brings you the remarkable story from the couple's family.
They got married here in State Center.
May 26, 1939.
In this house, on the day she graduated from high school, Norma Stock said yes to Gordon Yeager.
They're very old-fashioned. They believed in marriage till death do you part.
Dennis Yeager was the last of 4 children born to Gordon and Norma. His sister Donna was firstborn.
Staying together for 72 years, I'd say is good. And nowadays, that's exceptional.
The way the kids tell it, Dad was the life of the party. Mom kept everything together.
Anybody come over, she was the hostess with the mostest. She just, seriously, the more she did, the more she smiled. Dad would be the center of attention going, hey, look at me. And Mom's like, get him away from me, We even got a picture like that.
Norma didn't really want the distance. She hardly left his side for 72 years.
They just love being together. Even like everybody argues once in a while, but they still, he always said, I have to stick around until, I can't go until she does because I got to stay here for her. And she would say the same thing.
It's almost as if they knew.
Last Wednesday, they left home to go into town. Somehow there was an accident there.
At the intersection of Highway 30 and Jessup Avenue, just west of Marshalltown, state troopers say Gordon pulled in front of an oncoming car.
I rushed from Des Moines, where I was working, and saw him in the hospital.
In the intensive care unit of Marshalltown's hospital, nurses knew not to separate Gordon and Norma.
So they brought him in the same room in intensive care and put them together, and then they were holding hands in intensive care, and then, with the morphine and everything, and then they were not really responsive.
Gordon died at 3:38, holding hands with his wife. The family they built surrounded them.
And it was really strange. They were holding hands, and Dad stopped breathing. I couldn't figure out what was going on because the heart monitor's still going. And we're like, but he isn't breathing. Why? How would he still have a heartbeat? And she checked and everything, and she says, well, that's because they're holding hands and it's going through them. Then her heart was beating through him and picking it up.
They were still getting her heartbeat through him.
At 4:48, exactly 1 hour after Gordon, Norma passed too.
Neither one of them would have wanted to be without each other. I couldn't figure out how it was going to work. We were very blessed, honestly, that they went this way.
They just love being together.
That is all for this edition of Currents. Until next time, be sure to check out our website, currentsny.net. You can also catch up with us on Facebook and Twitter. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Maria Elena Giassi. Thank you for watching and have a great night.